Mr. Reed, step away from the project. The sentence cut through the Franklin Public School gym louder than the microphone squeal near the stage. Your presence raises questions. Questions about what? Marcus Reed asked. Linda Whitmore folded her hands over a red card resting on the display table. About whether your son actually did this work. For one long second, the science fair seemed to lose its sound. The fluorescent lights hummed above rows of baking soda volcanoes, cardboard bridges, and bright poster boards covered in glittering letters. Parents drifted between tables carrying paper cups of coffee, while judges in navy blazers checked clipboards and glanced toward the commotion near the storage room doors. That was where Caleb Reed's project had been placed, far from the center aisle, wedged between a janitor's cart and a stack of folded chairs. On the table stood a miniature neighborhood built from foam board, salvaged wire, and 3 clusters of tiny streetlights. A handwritten label read the quiet grid. Directly beneath it, the red card said Academic Integrity Review. Do not judge. Marcus was still wearing his gray custodial uniform. His name patch had faded from years of washing, and a brass ring of keys rested against his hip. He had spent the morning polishing the same floor where people now looked at him as though he had crossed a line simply by standing beside his 11-year-old son. Caleb held a black spiral notebook against his chest. Blue tape reinforced its worn binding. A red pencil rested behind his left ear. He did not argue. He rarely did when too many eyes turned toward him. Dr. Simon Pierce, the lead judge, checked his watch. We are already behind schedule. Then we should move on, Whitmore said gently. Her tone carried the careful softness of someone who wanted everyone to believe she was protecting a child. No one is trying to embarrass Caleb. We simply have to protect academic honesty. Adrian Halden, standing beside his son's polished robotics display, gave Marcus a sympathetic smile. These competitions put children under enormous pressure. Sometimes parents help more than they realize. Marcus looked at him, then at Whitmore. Did anyone ask Caleb to explain his project? Pierce tapped his pen against the clipboard. The complexity speaks for itself. So does the evidence, Whitmore added. Caleb's fingers tightened around the notebook. The binding slipped. Pages fanned across the tile like startled birds. A few parents stepped back to avoid them. Marcus knelt without a word. He gathered each sheet slowly, smoothing bent corners with the side of his hand. One page showed a rough drawing of 3 houses connected by uneven lines. Another held a column of crossed-out numbers. A third carried a dark burn mark where a resistor had overheated. These were not the clean pages of a finished answer. They were the messy remains of someone learning. Marcus found a roll of clear tape on the supply cart and repaired the notebook spine while the room moved on without them. Then he noticed the time printed at the top of the red review form. 7:12 a.m. The gym had not opened to students until 8. Caleb had not connected the model until 8:26. Marcus stood, holding the form between 2 fingers. When was this concern filed? Whitmore's expression did not change. After I reviewed his demonstration. He had not demonstrated it at 7:12. Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes shifted toward Adrian for less than a second. The timestamp may reflect when the form was created, not when I completed it. Principal Naomi Cole, a tall black woman in a charcoal suit, had been watching from near the registration table. She walked closer and studied the form without taking it from Marcus. Was Caleb interviewed before the flag was issued? She asked. Whitmore lifted her chin. There was enough material to justify caution. That was not my question, Naomi said. The gym seemed quieter now. Not silent, but listening. Marcus turned to Caleb. Do you want to go home? Caleb stared at the red card, then at the small model no judge had touched. His throat moved before any sound came. Finally, he shook his head. Marcus pulled a folding chair beside the table and sat down. Then we stay. Whitmore exhaled as though patience itself had become a burden. Mr. Reed, staying will not change the ruling. Marcus opened Caleb's notebook. We do not need you to believe him yet. His voice was low, steady, and impossible to hurry. We only need everything kept exactly as it is. He turned to the final page, where Caleb had circled one equation in red pencil. But the upper corner was missing. The part that should have carried the date had been torn clean away. Behind the storage room doors, the noise of the science fair softened into a distant blur of voices, rolling carts, and microphone feedback. Caleb sat on an overturned supply crate with the black notebook balanced across his knees. Marcus closed the door halfway, leaving it open enough for Principal Naomi Cole to see them from the hallway. He did not want anyone claiming they had hidden the project or changed the evidence. "I cannot do it," Caleb whispered. "You cannot do what?" Marcus asked. "Talk in front of them. You talk to me. You are not all of them." Marcus nodded. He understood that fear did not disappear because an adult called it confidence. He found a sheet of white poster board beside a box of markers and cut it into 5 small cards with a pair of safety scissors. On the first card, he wrote problem. On the second, prediction. Then test, mistake, and change. He placed them in a straight line across the crate. "You do not need to give them a speech," he said. "You only need to walk them through what happened." Caleb looked at the cards. "What if I forget?" "Then you look down." "What if they think I am reading?" "Scientists read notes every day." Caleb touched the card marked mistake. The fluorescent light above them flickered twice, then settled into a low hum. Somewhere beyond the door, applause rose for another student. Inside the narrow room, the air smelled of dust, floor cleaner, and warm cardboard. Marcus did not tell his son to ignore the fear. He simply gave it smaller places to stand. Naomi entered with a tablet in one hand. Linda Whitmore followed her, carrying the same careful expression she had worn beside the red card. "We have 30 minutes before the first judging round closes," Naomi said. "I am willing to review anything that establishes when Caleb developed the work." Whitmore folded her arms. "A parent can manufacture a timeline." Marcus did not look at her. "Caleb, where is the February test?" Caleb opened the notebook near the burned pages. "On my old tablet." The tablet was inside his backpack, its rubber case cracked at one corner. He searched through several files before finding a video dated February 14th. The image shook as it opened on the same miniature neighborhood, though only 6 houses had been built then. Caleb's younger voice came through the small speaker. "The east section keeps shutting off too late." Marcus could be heard from outside the frame. "What did you measure?" "I do not know." "Then do not guess. Write it down." In the video, Caleb reached for a wire. A tiny light flashed, and he pulled his hand back in surprise. Marcus stepped into view only long enough to unplug the battery pack. "What is the answer?" Caleb had asked. "I do not know the answer to your project," Marcus replied. "I know you have not tested enough." The recording continued. Caleb replaced a resistor, wrote a number in the notebook, and tried again. Naomi paused the video. "This confirms that he was working on the model in February." Whitmore tilted her head. "It also confirms that Mr. Reed was guiding him." Marcus finally met her eyes. "I told him to record the result." "You recognized the problem." "I recognized that he had not measured it." Naomi raised one hand before the exchange could harden. "The video proves participation. It does not yet prove authorship." Caleb swallowed, but Marcus nodded. "That is fair." Whitmore seemed almost surprised by the answer. Then she said, "Caleb never submitted the required weekly progress logs. That is why the project raised concern." Caleb looked up quickly. "I did. There are no files in the class folder. I uploaded 3. His voice was quiet, but this time it did not disappear. He opened the school portal and navigated to the science course. 3 automated confirmation emails remained in his inbox, each showing a different submission date. Naomi leaned closer. "Open the assignment history." Caleb tapped the screen. The folder appeared empty. Then a line of gray text loaded. Beneath each submission record, "Deleted by instructor." The room became still. Whitmore's expression held, but one hand tightened around the edge of her clipboard. Naomi read all 3 deletion times. The last file had been removed at 9:43 the previous night. Marcus looked at the 5 cards on the crate, then at the woman who had said there was nothing to review. The work was there, he said. Someone decided it should not be. Naomi locked the tablet screen and turned toward the hallway. I am calling the district technology administrator. Whitmore stepped after her. Principal Cole. There is a reasonable explanation. Naomi stopped at the doorway. Then the server log will show it. Caleb stared at the deleted records while Marcus quietly placed the 5 cards back into his hands. The first one said problem. Now, for the first time that morning, the problem was no longer Caleb. The district technology administrator arrived 12 minutes later carrying a silver laptop and the expression of a man who had learned never to trust an empty folder. Which account? He asked. Caleb Reed, Naomi said. Which course? 6th grade science. And who had deletion access? The question settled over the storage room before anyone answered. Linda Whitmore stood near the door, one hand resting lightly on her clipboard. Adrian Halden had moved closer from the gym, careful to remain just outside the room as though curiosity, not concern, had brought him there. Marcus stayed beside Caleb. He did not touch the tablet. He did not offer an explanation. He simply watched the administrator open the school server logs and search through lines of dates, account names, and file histories. Beyond the half-open door, the science fair continued under bright banners and strings of paper stars. Children explained solar ovens and water filters while judges moved from table to table. Yet in the narrow supply room, time had begun moving differently, measured not by applause but by the quiet appearance of facts. I found the first file, the administrator said. He turned the laptop toward Naomi. Caleb had uploaded it 6 weeks earlier. The document showed a rough sketch of the model with only 2 clusters of lights and a prediction that had later been crossed out. The second file appeared 4 weeks later. It contained a new relay, a longer test table, and 3 failed attempts written in plain language. The third file, uploaded 9 days before the fair, included the delay variable that Whitmore had claimed was never submitted. Can those dates be changed? Pierce asked from the doorway. Not by a student account, the administrator replied. Can a parent upload through the same account? Yes, if the parent has the password. Whitmore gave a small nod, almost relieved. Then we still have not established authorship. Marcus looked at Caleb. Did I upload them? Caleb shook his head. Did I type them? No. Then tell them how you did it. Caleb took a breath. I scanned the notebook pages with the library tablet. The scanner saves a device number. The administrator opened the metadata. All 3 files had been created on the same school library tablet, each during Caleb's assigned study period. A sign-out record confirmed his name and the exact times. Naomi asked the librarian to bring the weekly equipment sheet. 7 entries appeared beside Caleb's name, along with the initials of the laboratory aide who had issued him wire, salvaged relays, and 2 replacement resistors. The evidence was not dramatic. It did not arrive with music or applause. It came in ordinary pieces. A timestamp, a device number, a signature in blue ink. But truth often entered quietly because it did not need a performance. The administrator opened the deletion history next. All 3 files had been removed from the class folder at 9:43 the previous night by Whitmore's instructor account. 11 minutes earlier, the same account had received an email from Adrian Halden. Adrian stepped into the room. That email concerned scheduling. Naomi did not look at him. We have not opened it. Then you should not imply otherwise. I did not. Whitmore lifted her chin. I removed unverified material so the judges would not mistake it for approved work. Why remove all 3 versions? Naomi asked. Because they contained the same unsupported equation. Caleb looked down at the 5 cards in his hands. Marcus noticed Whitmore's choice of words. You said earlier that you had never seen the complete calculation, he said. I said I had not accepted it as authentic. No, Naomi replied. You said you had not reviewed the full work. Whitmore's fingers tightened around the clipboard. Pierce stepped inside and studied the recovered files. These records establish a timeline, he said. They do not establish understanding. That is correct, Marcus answered. Pierce looked surprised. Marcus continued, a child can copy a finished answer. He cannot easily copy 6 weeks of mistakes in the right order. But if that is still not enough, do not judge the notebook. Test the boy. Caleb's eyes rose toward his father. The room held the faint smell of printer paper and floor wax, and somewhere in the gym a bell announced 10 minutes remaining in the first round. Pierce closed the laptop. One problem. One attempt. No coaching. Marcus nodded. Make it something he has not seen. Pierce turned to Caleb. If your explanation fails, the review stands. Caleb looked at the first card, then the second, then the one marked mistake. His hand trembled, but he placed the cards in order. Okay, he said. Pierce checked his watch. Then let us find out who understands the equation. Where do you want me to stand? Marcus asked. Behind the line, Pierce said. And you may not help him. Understood. A strip of blue tape was placed 6 feet from the auxiliary judging table, and Marcus stepped behind it without complaint. Caleb carried the miniature neighborhood from the storage room with both hands, moving carefully so the salvaged wires beneath the foam board would not pull loose. Naomi walked beside him with the black notebook and the recovered server records. Whitmore followed with her clipboard. Adrian remained near the doorway, his expression calm and almost concerned, while his son Theo watched from beside the polished robotics display in the main gym. Pierce placed a new load sheet in front of Caleb. The values were different from anything in his notebook. You have 4 minutes, he said. Predict which section loses stability first. Caleb looked at the 3 clusters of lights. East, center, west. His red pencil hovered above the paper, but no numbers came. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder now. Beyond the open doors, hundreds of small sounds blended together. Shoes against tile, poster boards shifting, parents speaking softly, a judge clearing his throat. Caleb reached for the first card. Problem. Then the second. Prediction. His breathing slowed enough for him to write. The east section, he said. Why? Pierce asked. The load changes faster there. That is not an equation. I am getting to it. Whitmore checked the wall clock. He has already used half his time. Marcus said nothing. Caleb worked through the first line, crossed out a number, and started again. At 3 minutes and 40 seconds, he circled his prediction. Pierce connected the test load. Begin. Caleb pressed the switch. The east lights flickered once. The center lights dimmed. Then every light in the model went dark. A few quiet laughs rose from the gym entrance before Naomi turned, and the sound disappeared. Pierce looked at his clipboard. The prediction failed. No, Caleb whispered. Whitmore leaned closer. Caleb, the entire model shut down. That is not what it does. It is what it did, Pierce said. Caleb stared at the dark houses. His face had gone still, but his eyes moved from the battery pack to the relay board, then toward the extension cord running beneath the table. He bent down and paused. The faint smell of heated plastic drifted upward. Marcus recognized it too. Every instinct from his former work told him to cross the blue line, disconnect the load, and protect the equipment. He kept both hands behind his back. Caleb, he said quietly. Pierce turned sharply. No coaching. Marcus did not move. I am asking one question. He looked at his son. Are you testing the equation, or are you testing the power source? Caleb blinked. Then he dropped to one knee and followed the cord. The model shared a single power strip with 3 other displays. A heat lamp, a rotating planet model, and a large computer monitor. This was not connected here this morning, Caleb said. He took a small voltage meter from his supply box and checked the outlet. The reading rose, dipped, then rose again. The source is unstable. Pierce frowned. Real systems contain unstable conditions. Caleb nodded. Yes, that is why mine is supposed to detect them before they become failures. But the controller cannot work if the input drops below its minimum. Naomi stepped forward. Stop the clock. The rules do not allow a restart because of equipment problems, Whitmore said. Caleb pulled out his tablet and opened a photograph taken at 8:26 that morning. In the image, his model stood near the center aisle, connected to a separate wall outlet. Someone moved it, he said. Adrian spoke before anyone asked him. Perhaps the cord was changed when the table was moved into the corner. Naomi turned toward him. How did you know the connection changed during the move? Adrian's smile remained, but it arrived a moment too late. It seems obvious. The cord runs under the table, Marcus said. It is not visible from where you were standing. The air changed. Naomi requested the hallway camera feed from the district administrator. Within minutes, the footage appeared on his laptop. At 7:58, Whitmore pushed Caleb's table away from the center aisle and toward the storage room doors. At 8:11, Theo Halden entered carrying a monitor cable. He crouched beside the power strip, reached beneath the table, and remained there for nearly 20 seconds. Pierce stared at the frozen image. Whitmore lowered her clipboard. Adrian stepped closer to the screen. My son was setting up his project. Naomi looked through the open doorway toward Theo, who had gone pale beneath the bright gym lights. Then we will ask him what he changed. Caleb looked at the dark model, then at the boy across the room. He might not have known, he said. Marcus watched his son protect the truth without rushing to blame anyone. Then the camera administrator advanced the footage by 3 seconds, and Theo's hand emerged from beneath Caleb's table holding the original power plug. I unplugged it, Theo said. Did you know it would shut down Caleb's model? Naomi asked. No. Did anyone tell you to touch his table? Theo looked toward his father, then lowered his eyes. The gym had grown quiet around them. Adrian Halden stepped forward with the practiced calm of a man accustomed to explaining problems before anyone could define them. My son needed an outlet for his monitor. This was an innocent setup mistake. Naomi kept her attention on Theo. Is that what happened? Theo nodded. My screen cable would not reach. I moved Caleb's plug to the power strip and put mine in the wall. He rubbed his thumb against the edge of his student badge. I did not know his project needed its own outlet. Caleb stood beside the dark model, still holding the voltage meter. Whitmore looked from the camera image to the judges. Then there was no sabotage. We can return to the original result. The original result tested the power strip, Caleb said. His voice was soft, but it carried. Pierce studied him. Are you saying Theo caused the failure? Caleb looked across the room at the other boy. Theo's shoulders had drawn inward beneath his white science club shirt. He caused the power problem, Caleb said. That is not the same as trying to ruin my project. Marcus watched his son choose accuracy over anger. It would have been easy to use the camera as a weapon. Caleb used it as a measurement. Naomi ordered a separate outlet tested and cleared. The district administrator photographed every connection before Caleb plugged the model back in. Pierce wrote 3 new load values on a clean sheet. You will receive a fresh test, he said. No one touches the equipment after this point. Caleb nodded. Marcus remained behind the blue line. The east cluster glowed pale yellow. The center cluster flickered once, then steadied. Caleb read the first values, worked through his equation, and pointed left. East section, after 5.8 seconds. Pierce started the timer. The east lights dimmed at 5.8. The relay clicked, and the backup line restored them. No one applauded. The second test came faster. Caleb predicted the center section. He was correct again. Pierce changed the final load, increasing the demand on 2 clusters at once. Caleb hesitated over the last line. He wrote a value, erased it, and wrote another. West section at 7.1 seconds. The model began. The west lights dimmed at 6.2. The backup relay switched before Caleb's prediction. Pierce stopped the timer. Nearly 1 second off. Whitmore released a careful breath. Which is significant. Yes, Caleb said. It is. Marcus did not move, though he could see where the difference had begun. Caleb opened the black notebook to the pages marked by the small burn. He traced a row of uneven numbers with his red pencil. The relays are not all the same age, he said. The center one opens faster. The west one is slower when it is cold, but faster after it has already carried a load. Pierce leaned closer. Where is that accounted for? Caleb turned to the final equation. Here. He pointed to the variable beside the torn corner. I added the delay after the February test. The first equation treated every relay like it reacted the same way. They do not. Why use mismatched relays? One of the other judges asked. Caleb opened a plastic parts box. Each compartment held used components labeled with masking tape. Because the school did not have 3 new ones, the laboratory aide brought the equipment ledger and a yellow supply receipt. It listed 3 salvaged relays removed from an old emergency lighting panel, each with a different manufacturing year. Pierce compared the serial numbers with Caleb's notes. They matched. A modern controller could compensate automatically, he said. I know, Caleb replied. But places with modern controllers do not need my project as much. The words settled over the table. He explained that his equation was designed for small schools, community centers, and rural buildings using older equipment. It did not assume perfect parts. It measured their imperfections and adjusted before a local failure spread. Naomi looked at the miniature houses, then at the worn supply receipt. So the limitation created the idea. Caleb nodded. The mistake did. Whitmore tapped the notebook. That final variable was not in the material he submitted. The district administrator turned his laptop around. It appears in the 3rd recovered file. The room went still again. Pierce examined the equation, then the handwriting, then Marcus. His eyes narrowed at the faded name patch on the custodial shirt. Marcus Reed, he said slowly. Have you ever worked in electrical protection systems? Marcus did not answer immediately. Pierce looked back at the equation as recognition moved across his face. I have seen that name on a regional grid report. Yes, Marcus said. The answer was quiet, but it changed the room. Pierce looked from the faded custodian badge to the handwritten equation in Caleb's notebook. You were an engineer. I was. Protection systems? Regional grid stability and fault isolation. A murmur moved through the parents gathered near the auxiliary table. Adrian Halden stepped closer, concern arranged carefully across his face. Then this is no longer a question of whether Caleb worked hard. It is a question of how much professional assistance he received. Whitmore lowered her voice as though offering mercy. No one would blame a father for wanting his child to succeed. Marcus looked at her. You are not blaming me. You are using me to erase him. The fluorescent lights reflected across the dark surface of the model. Caleb stood beside it with his red pencil still touching the final variable. A moment earlier, the room had begun to see an 11-year-old solving a real problem. Now every eye had shifted back to his father. Marcus recognized the pattern. People often found it easier to believe in a hidden adult than in a child they had already underestimated. Naomi opened the district laptop. We will verify Mr. Reed's work history and compare his published material with Caleb's project. That may take hours, Whitmore said. Then the awards can wait, Naomi replied. Pierce searched the Public Engineering Archive and found a report dated 8 years earlier. Marcus Reed appeared as the lead author on a regional protection study involving automatic separation of overloaded sections. Diagrams filled the screen with industrial relays, transmission lines, and equations far beyond anything displayed on Caleb's foam board. Pierce read several pages, then turned the laptop toward Marcus. Did you teach him this method? No. Did you explain fault isolation? I explained why one broken section should not darken every other section. That is the foundation of the project. It is also how circuit breakers work in a house. Adrian gave a restrained smile. A skilled engineer can simplify his own work for a child. Marcus nodded once. He can. That does not mean he did. Naomi contacted an electrical engineering professor from the local community college who had volunteered as an alternate judge. Professor Evelyn Grant arrived carrying reading glasses and a paper cup of coffee. She studied Marcus's old report first, then Caleb's notebook, then the recovered files. "These are not the same method," she said. Pierce folded his arms. "Explain." Mr. Reed's report models large systems using equipment specifications and network protection zones. Caleb's equation estimates local instability from observed delay. It is less sophisticated, but it solves a different problem. She pointed to the uneven rows of test results. This came from repeated physical trials. Whoever developed it had to watch these old relays behave badly. Caleb spoke before anyone else could. They behaved differently when the room was cold. Grant looked at him. "How did you discover that?" "The East relay was slower before school and faster after lunch." "What did your father suggest?" Caleb hesitated. "He showed me a standard calculation." Adrian answered too quickly. "Exactly. He guided the boy from the beginning." Naomi turned toward him. "How do you know what Marcus showed Caleb?" Adrian's expression tightened. "The video established that he was involved." "The public video did not include that conversation," the district administrator said. "It appears only in the third progress file." Silence gathered around Adrian. Whitmore shifted her clipboard against her chest. Naomi asked the administrator to review access records. The screen showed that Whitmore had opened Caleb's third submission 3 times. A second access had come through the faculty review link she forwarded to Adrian's donor committee account. That link was for scheduling, Adrian said. "It contains student work," Naomi replied. "You viewed material that was not yours to review." Grant returned to the notebook. "There is another important difference," she said. "The standard method Mr. Reed apparently suggested does not appear in the final design." Caleb nodded. "It did not work with used parts." "So what did you do?" "I stopped using it." Pierce studied Marcus. "You allowed your son to reject your approach?" "It was his project." "And if he failed?" Marcus looked toward Caleb. "Then the failure would belong to him, and so would whatever he learned next." Pierce removed his glasses. Respect had entered his expression, but doubt remained. "Your history still creates a reasonable concern." "It should," Marcus said. "Then remove the history." Pierce frowned. Marcus stepped away from the blue line and placed his old report beside the district laptop. "Create a problem neither of us has seen. Change the loads. Change the relay. Seal the numbers until the test begins." Naomi watched him carefully. "You understand Caleb could fail in front of everyone?" "Yes." Caleb looked at his father, fear returning to his face. Marcus did not promise victory. He only said, "The truth deserves a fair test." Pierce glanced at the other judges, then reached for a blank envelope. "No coaching. No prepared data. 5 minutes." Marcus nodded. "And I will stand where he cannot see me." Caleb tightened his hand around the red pencil. For the first time, proving his father had once been an engineer had made the challenge harder, not easier. Then Pierce sealed the new test values inside the envelope and placed it on the table between them. "What if I forget everything?" Caleb asked. "Then remember what you did first," Marcus said. "What if they still do not believe me? Then the evidence will have to speak twice. And what if I fail?" Marcus looked at the sealed envelope resting beneath Pierce's hand. He could have promised his son that everything would work. He could have used his old title, challenged the judges, or explained the equation himself. Instead, he gave Caleb something harder and more honest. "Then you will fail at your own work," he said, "and no one will have the right to call it someone else's." The gym lights shone across the polished floor as students and parents gathered around the auxiliary table. Naomi had moved the final test into the main judging area so every decision would be visible. The miniature neighborhood sat beneath a portable camera connected to the projector screen. 3 clusters of tiny houses waited in darkness. Caleb arranged his 5 cards beside the black notebook, then turned each one face down. Marcus noticed and raised an eyebrow. "I know what they say," Caleb whispered. "Good. I still want them here. That is what notes are for." Pierce pointed toward the far wall. "Mr. Reed, you will stand behind the audience." No speaking, no gestures, and no eye contact once the test begins. Marcus crossed the gym without argument. Each step placed more distance between him and Caleb. That distance was not abandonment. It was trust, and trust often looked cruel before it looked brave. Caleb watched his father disappear behind a row of parents. His fingers tightened around the red pencil. Then someone touched his sleeve. Theo Halden stood beside him, holding a folded sheet of printer paper. "I need to give you this," Theo said. "What is it?" "Something my dad sent." "Why are you giving it to me?" Theo looked toward Adrian, who was speaking quietly with Whitmore near the judge's table. "Because he said your project would make mine look ordinary. He said I could not let that happen." Caleb did not open the paper. "Did he tell you to unplug mine?"
No.
"He told me I had to win. I moved the plug because my monitor cable would not reach."
Theo swallow.
"But I heard him talking to Miss Whitmore last night. I printed the email from his office computer." Caleb carried the folded page to Marcus. Marcus read only the first line before his expression changed. The message was addressed to Whitmore. It said that placing Caleb's project near Theo's would create unnecessary questions about the quality of the advanced program. Beneath it was Whitmore's reply. She had written that she would handle the issue before the judges arrived. "Show everyone," Caleb whispered. Marcus folded the page again. "Not yet. But it proves they planned it. It may prove that. First, it must be verified." He handed the paper to Naomi instead of raising it before the crowd. Adrian saw the exchange and stepped forward. "That is private correspondence." Naomi studied the page. "Then you acknowledge sending it?" Adrian stopped. Whitmore spoke quickly. The phrase "handle the issue" referred to scheduling. "You told us there had been no discussion about Caleb's table," Naomi said. "There was no improper discussion. The server will decide whether it was improper," Marcus replied. Naomi gave the document to the district administrator. He checked the message headers against the school archive. The sending address, timestamp, and reply record matched. Adrian's polished calm began to thin. "A donor has the right to ask questions about program standards." Pierce looked at him. "A donor does not have the right to decide which child is heard." Whitmore held her clipboard against her chest. "No one prevented Caleb from being heard." Naomi turned toward the red review card still lying on the corner table. "He was marked before the doors opened, moved out of the judging area, denied a presentation, and had his progress files deleted. We will not call that an accident." The crowd stirred, but Marcus did not look satisfied. Public shame was not the same as justice, and exposing Adrian would not prove Caleb's equation. Pierce seemed to understand. "The test still matters," he said. "It matters more now," Marcus replied. Naomi asked Caleb if he wanted the gym cleared. "You may present privately," she said. Caleb looked at the faces surrounding him, then toward the far wall where his father stood. "No," he said. His voice shook, but it remained audible. "They already watched people say I cheated. They can watch me explain." Pierce placed the sealed envelope beneath the camera. "Once this opens, you have 5 minutes." Caleb set the red pencil beside the blank calculation sheet. Naomi confirmed that the new relay and load values had been selected by 3 judges and recorded before Marcus entered the room. Theo stepped away from his father and stood beside the other students. Whitmore lowered her eyes. Adrian said nothing. Pierce broke the seal, removed the hidden data, and placed it in front of Caleb. The timer began. Caleb read the first number, then the second. His hand moved toward the page, stopped, and began to tremble. Caleb stared at the numbers until they seemed to drift apart on the page. 4 minutes, 40 seconds, Pierce said. "I know," Caleb whispered. "Do you understand the new relay?" "I think so. Thinking is not proof." The words landed sharply, but Caleb did not look up. He placed his left hand flat beside the calculation sheet and pressed the red pencil to the paper. The first line came slowly. The second came faster. Around him, the gym seemed to hold one enormous breath. The projector enlarged every mark he made. including the number he wrote incorrectly near the delay variable. Whitmore noticed it first. That value does not match the test sheet. Adrian leaned toward her. This has gone on long enough. Caleb froze. The pencil stopped. Behind the audience, Marcus felt every eye searching for him, waiting for the hidden engineer to rescue his son. He remained silent. He had promised no coaching, and dignity meant honoring the rule even when silence hurt. Caleb erased the number, but a gray shadow remained on the page. He looked toward the 3 clusters of miniature houses, then at the replacement relay mounted near the west section. It was newer than the salvaged parts he had tested before. Its response time was printed on the test sheet, but only at standard temperature. Caleb touched the card marked mistake, still face down beside the notebook. 3 minutes, Pierce said. The sheet gives the factory delay, Caleb said. Correct. But the relay is already warm. Pierce leaned closer. Why does that matter? Because the delay changes after current passes through it. Is that written in your equation? Caleb shook his head. Not yet. A faint murmur moved through the crowd. Whitmore glanced toward the clock. Adrian spoke softly, believing the nearby microphone had been muted. You said he would never reach the stage. His words traveled through the livestream system and came back through the gym. Speakers, clear enough for every parent, student, and judge to hear. Whitmore turned toward him, her face losing color. Naomi looked at the audio technician. Preserve that recording. Adrian opened his mouth, but Pierce raised one hand. The test continues. Caleb looked down again. He added a small correction beside the final variable, using the relay's warm response instead of its printed rating. Professor Grant studied the change on the projected page. Her eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, but recognition. He is adapting the model, she whispered. Pierce heard her. Caleb, have you used that correction before? No. Then how do you know it belongs there? Caleb pointed toward the uneven rows in his black notebook. Because every old relay changed after the first test. A newer one should change less, but it should still change. 1 minute 20 seconds, Pierce said. Caleb completed the equation and circled the result. The east section loses stability first. At what time? 6.4 seconds. Pierce checked the calculation but gave no reaction. The judges connected the new load. Naomi confirmed the camera, timer, and independent voltage meter were recording. Marcus stood so far behind the crowd that Caleb could barely see him. For one brief moment their eyes met. Marcus did not nod. He did not point. He only placed one hand against his chest and drew a slow breath. Caleb did the same. Begin, Pierce said. Caleb pressed the switch. The miniature neighborhood came alive beneath the gym lights. The center cluster glowed steadily. The west relay clicked once. The east lights began to flicker. Pierce watched the timer. Professor Grant watched the voltage meter. Whitmore stared at the floor. 3, Caleb said quietly. The east cluster dimmed. 2. A warning light turned red. 1. At 6.4 seconds, the system opened the overloaded line and shifted power through the backup route. The east houses brightened. Then the center. Then the west. Every tiny streetlight across the model came on together, warm and steady. No one applauded. No one moved. The only sound was the soft mechanical click of the relay settling into place. Pierce removed his glasses. Who taught you that equation? Caleb looked past the judges toward the man in the gray custodial uniform. No one, he said. My father only taught me to write down every time I was wrong. Pierce lowered his clipboard. Naomi stood beside the verified server records, the recovered email, and the preserved audio file. Whitmore could no longer hide behind procedure. Adrian could no longer hide behind concern. The truth had arrived through separate paths, and each path led to the same table. Naomi stepped toward the microphone with a sealed folder in her hands. Before any award is announced, she said, this school must reveal what its investigation found. Naomi opened the sealed folder and faced the crowded gym. The recovered server records show that Caleb Reed submitted 3 progress files on time, she said. Those files were deleted last night through an instructor account. Whitmore stared at the floor. The camera record confirms that Caleb's table was moved before judging began. The access log confirms that private student work was shared with a donor account. The verified email confirms that pressure was applied to keep Caleb's project away from the central judging area. Adrian stepped forward. You are presenting ordinary administrative decisions as misconduct. Then let us include the recording, Naomi replied. The audio technician played his words through the speakers. You said he would never reach the stage. Adrian's polite expression disappeared. No argument followed. There was nothing left for courtesy to disguise. Naomi continued. The academic integrity flag against Caleb is removed. The original judging round is void. Every project will be reviewed again under the same published standards. A murmur moved through the gym. Caleb looked at the miniature neighborhood, not the crowd. Marcus remained near the back wall. He had spent the entire morning asking for one fair chance. But when that chance finally arrived, he did not step forward to claim it. Pierce walked to Caleb's table and placed his clipboard down. I owe you an apology, he said. Caleb looked up. I demanded evidence from you while accepting assumptions from adults without testing them. That was not scientific, and it was not fair. Caleb held the red pencil between both hands. You listened at the end. Pierce nodded. I should have listened at the beginning. Professor Grant and the other judges completed the new review. Caleb did not receive first place automatically. 2 other projects had earned strong scores, and Naomi refused to replace one unfair process with another emotional decision. Instead, Caleb received the Applied Engineering Award and a place in the District Science Fair, subject to a transparent second review. When his name was announced, the applause began slowly. Caleb flinched at the sound, then found Marcus across the room. Marcus lifted one hand, not in triumph, but in recognition. Caleb had done it himself. Later, Naomi met privately with Whitmore. The teacher was removed from the science fair committee while the district reviewed her conduct. Before leaving, she approached Caleb beside the storage room doors. I thought I was protecting the competition, she said. Caleb studied her for a long moment. You should have asked me first. Whitmore nodded, unable to soften the truth. Theo stood several feet away from his father. Adrian had been removed from the academic donor committee, and for the first time that day, he looked less angry than uncertain. Theo carried his robotics controller toward Caleb. My project uses newer relays, he said. Maybe we could test your equation with them. Caleb did not smile immediately. He looked at the controller, then at Theo. Not today.
Theo nốt đét.
Maybe next week. Maybe. It was not instant friendship. It was only a door left unlocked, and sometimes second chances began that quietly. Naomi later offered Marcus a paid advisory position with the district technology program. He declined the title but accepted permission to open a Thursday afternoon repair club using discarded equipment. Students from the advanced program? Naomi asked. All students, Marcus replied, especially the ones nobody expects. 1 week later, the gym was empty again. Marcus guided his mop across the same floor where the red card had once rested. On the wall near the science display case, Caleb's final equation had been framed beside a photograph of the glowing model. Beneath it was a sentence written in Caleb's own careful handwriting. A mistake is evidence that the next version can be better. Caleb entered carrying his black notebook, now repaired with a fresh strip of blue tape. He placed a single card on his father's supply cart. Marcus turned it over. Dad, I can explain it myself now. He read the words twice, folded the card carefully, and slipped it into the pocket above his faded name patch. Ready to go home? He asked. Caleb nodded. Marcus switched off the gym lights. The ceiling dimmed, the polished floor disappeared into shadow, and the building grew still. But behind the glass of the display case, 3 clusters of tiny streetlights remained glowing, steady and warm, because one quiet boy had been allowed to finish his sentence.